On the iHeartRadio app.
Think It Up is an initiative to activate student-powered, teacher-led learning projects. Students and teachers, how can you spark great learning experiences in your classrooms today? Join at thinkitup.org.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
It might be time to sound the alarm for the Dodgers. They lost 3 out of 4 games at home over the weekend to the Milwaukee Brewers. Their 6-2 loss Sunday dropped them 3 games behind Milwaukee for the best record in Major League Baseball and a half game behind the Atlanta Braves. Milwaukee has the tiebreaker advantage over the Dodgers if they end up tied at the end of the regular season. That means the Dodgers would not have home field advantage if they meet up with Milwaukee in the playoffs. And if the Dodgers don't straighten up, they could be playing in the wild card round. The Dodgers are 13-18 since they had MLB's best record at 61-33 on July 10th. They're 5-11 in their last 16 games and 9-13 since they hung out with Trump at the White House on July 23rd. The Dodgers are not playing like a team that has visions of winning a third straight World Series. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. My big mama used to say that there are 24 hours in a day, 12 hours to mind your business, and 12 hours to leave other folks' business alone. So let's talk about our business, Crenshaw Business. For over 5 years now, the good people of the Crenshaw Corridor have lived in a gated community, but not by choice. Gates, fences, barricades, limited street access, closed lots, and then some. By now, you've heard the stories from the folk who've lived this nightmare. Business owners have lost customers. A charter school lost students. A veterinarian lost clients. Churches have lost members. And still, Procrastination Crenshaw sits unfinished. And when I say sits unfinished, I mean sits unfinished. Nobody was seduced by the Jedi mind trick they tried to play when they ran that headline on the front page of a local black newspaper about the project restarting in weeks. I mean, come see for yourself. The only trucks on Crenshaw are deconstruction trucks. It took a minute, but to her credit, LA Mayor Karen Bass showed up and she's leaning in on getting our parking back. But think about this for just a second. LA is not Chocolate City, and yet we are blessed to have a black mayor and a black city council president. But where is the black city council president? Where is Marquise Harris Dawson? This is his project in his district, but he has been strangely quiet. Did you notice in the recent Los Angeles Times story about Procrastination Crenshaw that neither Marquise Harris Dawson nor Destination Crenshaw had a word to say on the record? The silence was deafening. When people ask me why the silence, all I can say is, good question. As a reminder, the Crenshaw Corridor community sent him a letter, and it laid out real demands. A public timeline, relief for the businesses that have suffered, and an audit. At the moment, the last one matters most, the audit. Here's the thing. The foundation money, the private donations, that's their business. But this project is also funded by city money, state money, and federal money. I refer you back to the front page story in that black newspaper where they all talked about this. Go read it again. In any event, it's your money. And when public money goes into a $100 million project that still sits unfinished, the public has a right to see where every dollar went. Contracts, budgets, payments, schedules. That's not too much to ask. Again, it's your money. Our letter gave Mr. Harris Dawson a deadline, Friday, September 4th, to respond. The clock is ticking, Mr. President. 12 hours to mind the public's business. And this is one of them. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
How did you want it?
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Oh, 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 oh. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Oh, 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 oh. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Oh, 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 oh. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Oh, 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 oh. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. KBLA Talk 1580. Download the app.
Hey, it's Moving Mountain Mondays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. The lens, as in like your eyeglass lenses. Why Black America reads the same country differently. In 1903, W.E.B. Du Bois handed America a diagnostic instrument, and this country has spent 123 years refusing to pick it up. He wrote that it is a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, this sense of always looking at one's self through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on amused with contempt and pity. Notice the tape. We did not manufacture it, we did not calibrate it, and yet it is the instrument by which we are told what we weigh. And notice the disposition of the man holding it, not hatred, amusement. Hatred concedes a serious threat. Amusement concedes nothing. But Du Bois did not stop at the wound. He told us what the strife was for. He said the history of the American Negro is the history of this longing to merge his double self into a better and truer self, and that in this merging he wishes neither of the older selves lost. He simply wishes to make it possible for a man to be both a Negro and American. Hold on to that word for just a minute, both. He did not stop being African. In fact, he's buried in Africa. He did not stop being American. He asked for a grammar in which the conjunction would hold. If this were only a poet's melancholy, it would leave no material to trace. It left one. The trace is in our own name. African, colored, Negro, Black, African American. No other community in this republic has changed its collective name 5 times in 400 years. That's not fashion. That's a people reaching again and again for an adequate word to describe a condition, and finding every word they were handed had been cut on somebody else's tape. Dr. King saw the same structure from the pulpit, children of two cultures, Africa and America, and warned that in the search for wholeness, too many of us embrace one side of our nature. The temptation is not the doubleness. The temptation, Dr. King argues, is the amputation. Then in December of 1988 in Chicago, the diagnosis became remedy. More than 75 Black organizations convened by Dr. Ramona Edelin of the National Urban Coalition put a proposal on the table. Change the vernacular. My father did what he believed in. He carried it to the country. His argument was structural, not sentimental. He said that to be called African American was cultural integrity, that it puts us in our proper historical context, that every ethnic group in this country has a reference to some home base, some historical and cultural base. Every other group in America is named for a place. Italian Americans, Irish Americans, Chinese Americans. Only we were named for a pigment. And a pigment is not a lineage. It has no port of departure, no language, no ancestral background, no history. Black is a void. It's what a stranger sees from 30 feet. So understand what happened in Chicago. this was not a press release about terminology, that was Du Bois's merger attempted in public. African the base, American the birthright, neither of the older selves lost. In the space of a single hyphen, my father proposed a grammatical solution to a psychological wound, because a people who cannot name themselves cannot fully author themselves. Here's why that matters this November. From 1619 forward, we've not merely experienced American history, we've interrupted it and we've interpreted it always through the double lens, which means every issue on this year's ballot arrives already split in two. Start with the economy. Both parties will run on it and both will cite the same July jobs report. One reading Black unemployment fell 6.6% down to 6.3. The numbers are moving the right way. The other reading off the same page of the same report, 123,000 fewer Black people were working in July than in June. The rate improved by subtraction. A man who stops looking stops being counted, and you can remove a people from a statistic without removing them from the hardship. At 6.3 against 3.6 for white workers, we still carry nearly twice the amount of unemployment, the same ratio my father was preaching about before I was born. Then look at the ballot itself. On the reading, 1965 solved it. Shelby County in 2013 retired scaffolding no longer needed. The other pre-clearance was the load-bearing wall. When it came tumbling down on the states, they filed the same bills. Then Brnovich narrowed Section 2, then Calais in April. And watch what April brought. By the end of May, Louisiana had eliminated one of its two majority Black districts. Georgia called a special section. At least 9 states redrew their maps. A majority Black district existed in the spring and will not exist in November, and the machinery that removed it never once had to say why. Same report, same court, same calendar, 2 irreconcilable accounts. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More on KBLA. We're going to be talking about the lens in this hour, right here with Ernest Quim on Moving Mountain Mondays on KBLA Talk 1580.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Just in case you missed our Procrastination Crenshaw Town Hall.
I'm an Eaton Fire hero. I was trapped there January 7th, 2025. So I was awarded the Carnegie American Red Cross and the Kiwanis Lifesaver Award. So to me, this looks like a slow burn. You constantly see Dr. Hardy, Patrick Caldwell, Mr. Smiley here. Their business is slowly impacted. Now in Altadena, it was a quick burn. Everybody left. Everybody got priced out. They didn't have enough money to stay afloat. They couldn't rebuild their property. So to me, this is a target for the developers. In my opinion, having been in Altadena for 18 months, still today, I still feed all of those people there because they're still displaced because they can't afford to come back. So what do? They move down to the Inland Empire, or they just call it a day and they go back to another state. So it's important to hold leadership accountable because as of right now, they've abdicated their responsibility. They just show up for the cameras and they don't even come to see you.
Keeping them in check. We're KBLA Talk 1580.
The KBLA 1580 app puts the realest conversations right in your pocket. Stream live wherever you are in the world. No static. No searching the dial. A crystal clear connection 24/7, exactly when you want it. We recommend that you keep automatic updates enabled. Set it and forget it. So the app stays up to date with store requirements, bug fixes, and new features as we roll them out. Download the KBLA 1580 app today and stay plugged into the conversation everyone's having.
Are you drowning in IRS tax debt?
With Civic Tax Relief, they were able to save me upwards of $80,000 that I would have had to pay had I not reached out to them.
Get ready for a toll-free hotline. Take advantage of new IRS tax forgiveness programs that may protect you from IRS collection agencies.
I owe the IRS $37,000.
They have the power to garnish your wages, put liens on your property, and levy your bank account. Civic Tax Relief can help protect you from the IRS.
Civic Tax Relief basically represented me against the IRS. By the time everything was completed, I didn't know the IRS anything.
Find out about the Fresh Start program that is now available through Civic Tax Relief. Civic Tax Relief's special tax hotline can help you discover all the relief programs available for free.
I would recommend anyone who has a tax problem to contact Civic Tax Relief.
Just call 800-285-3500, 800-285-3500. Don't wait. Call now. 800-285-3500, 800-285-3500.
brothers and sisters.
There is no denying that we've always been the conscience of this country. KBLA Talk 1580 is progressive talk radio built for our community, by our community, and with hosts who look like you, live near you, and care about what you care about. 50,000 watts of truth right here in Southern California. KBLA Talk 1580. Listen live on your AM radio dial at 1580 or stream us live on our KBLA1580.com website or on our free KBLA 1580 app.
Unapologetically progressive. Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. I want to finish this editorial, and I think it's very important that I get to this central point. And before anyone says our politics are too divided for a theory of unity, the Tunis was never a prediction of agreement. It describes the lens. One man looks through it and concludes the covenant is real. That one man looks through it and says the covenant is real. Another man looks through it and concludes it was never offered. We should build on the outside of it. King and Malcolm, coalition and independence. Those are not evidence against the double lens. They are its two most predictable outputs. That is the Tunis in voting. Should we vote Democrats? Should we vote Republicans? Have Democrats not done enough for us? Have Republicans done anything for us? The Tunis manifests itself in voting. So when you hear that we view this country through a distorted lens, here's the reply. We don't see it through a distorted lens. We see it through both. The one nation printed on its founding documents and the one that ended up enforcing its statutes. And we've been made to hold them the same page at the same time and to read in a single sentence a promise and its violation. A promise, all men are created equal, and its violation, that it did not apply to us. We are African, then colored, then Negro, then Black, then African American. 5 names in 400 years, each attempt to say in one word what this republic has never said the courage or had the courage to admit in a whole constitution. That it made us both, and it owes us both, but it has settled neither. Moving Mountain Mondays with Ernest Krim. Ernest Krim is an Emmy-nominated producer, a public teacher, anti-racist educator, and hate crime victor who uses Black historical narratives to empower and educate through a culturally equitable lens. Mr. Krim has more than 4 million followers on various social media platforms as of 2024. Ernest, welcome forward to the show.
Well, thanks again for having me, brother.
Brother, give me your thoughts on the duality of what it means to be Black American, African American, Negro American, our sense of two-ness, the two consciences.
I think the fact that we've had to figure out different ways to describe ourselves over time gives merit to our unique cultural experience in this country. And I think that one of the things that I reflect on as you read your editorial and the profound words of Dr. Du Bois is what we have to, for one, make sure we equip parents with in this back to school season. And I think one of the most important things is to ensure that we are aware that we're building this bridge so that staff members, teachers who are addressing our kids, especially if they are in a diverse school or where they are the minority, that we are aware that throughout this country, throughout this summer, throughout this year, we have been bombarded with news in our community of Black bodies hanging from trees, being found in rivers and lakes and various bodies of water, being found dead. This feels to many of us like it must have felt comparatively, but of course not exactly the same, in 1955 when Emmett Till's body was discovered accidentally. We have to ensure that when we are in these spaces and our kids go in these spaces, that we're not sacrificing ourselves so much that we forget that we have to make sure they know what we have endured. And because of that, they have to make sure they address our kids with through the context of the unique experience that they have. What programs, what procedures are in place to make sure that our kids' social, emotional needs are being met at this moment? With respect to the indigenous community, that is really the only community that can relate in some form or fashion of what we've experienced and what we continue to experience. My reflection beyond that is simply to say that I am here today as a public teacher and independent teacher because it was too difficult for me to continue to navigate this double consciousness, because the more outspoken I became, the more I felt I had to speak up for my kids, the more I didn't fit in that space anymore. Because when you begin to speak out in defense of your people, you know that you become a target, especially when you are in these spaces. The term I think of in this moment, it was coined by Dr. William A. Smith in 2003, called racial battle fatigue. And this explains how, and I'm quoting, how constant exposure to racism, microaggressions, and hostile environments wears down a person's health and well-being over time. Symptoms can include physical things like headaches, high blood pressure, trouble sleeping, muscle tension, extreme exhaustion, psychological effects, anxiety, depression, frustration, hypervigilance, and loss of self-confidence. And behavioral effects could be social withdrawal, trouble focusing, irritability, and lack of motivation. And when I was in that school system, primarily the years that I was one of 2 to 3 Black male educators, primarily teaching children of color in a low-income environment, I began to feel that. And every Black person, I think, that's listening right now that works in these types of corporate spaces can relate to that.
I really appreciate that. I want to talk about motivation for just a moment, because it reminded me of an example in Dallas. Former Dallas school principal Chandra Hooper Barnett was removed from her position and subsequently rehired by the district to lead a different campus. The controversy centered around a racially segregated meeting that she held with Black students regarding the school's academic rating. In October of 2025, Hooper Barnett, the principal of Woodrow Wilson High School, called a meeting strictly for Black students to discuss the school's academic performance. The backlash. Parents reported that the principal unfairly blamed Black students for bringing the school's grade average down from a A rating to a B rating. Families stated that the talk felt more like punishment rather than encouragement. It actually turns out that she was pulling the Black students aside as a Black female principal to encourage them to do better, to be better, enough shucking and jiving, enough social enjoyment, enough worrying about your gym shoes and your clothes. I need to see more of you all in the library and taking advantage of the tutoring programs so that you can be at the head of the class, that you can push the entire school over the mark. I think that she was ultimately rewarded and hired as African-American parents then heard that she was pulling their children aside to encourage them to be better. I can only imagine that there are plenty Black principals and teachers who are going back to school at this very moment who are struggling with the duality of, hey, this is my job to teach everyone, but I'm also looking out upon a class where there are children who don't have anything to eat, where there's no father at home, where there's no motivation, there's no encouragement, and I have to play that role as well.
This reminds me of this conversation, it seems that we have every year around the low literacy rates around this country. And particularly this conversation tends to focus on our kids. I'm thinking of this video. I'm not sure if people have seen it, but this video was seen by millions of people online. It was a content creator based in Texas who made a video about how his kids, I think in the AP class, were struggling with reading and writing, even with him providing prompts for them to fill in. And it made me think about how when we are in these spaces, we have to ensure we have to be sure that the educators who are coming across our kids, like I'm assuming in this situation, are aware of the historical context of why some of our kids might be behind. And we might think of it sometimes as maybe it's a parental thing, maybe it's a family thing, but it's truly a generational thing that has not been healed or resolved. We cannot talk about this without understanding the generational issues we've had with education in this country. The fact that it was illegal in some form or fashion, the fact that even after enslavement, we found ways to succeed and found ways to be self-determined to get our education. But then we also understand what happened with Brown v. Board of Education. We understand what happened with the fact that there has never been a time in history when a majority Black school has had equitable funding with white schools. And still, we're here. We're in the ballpark, right? But we need additional support for most of our kids, because I always tell people the privilege that my children have is there are 2 educators in the household, and we are on opposite ends. My wife is a math teacher. I was a social science teacher, which means I had to also teach reading. So we balance each other in that way. And our kids are taking honors classes. Yeah, they're smart, but they work hard. Because what? Because we push them, because we know the inner workings of the system. And one of the crimes that we find in educational spaces, y'all, especially, and I don't want to say just diverse spaces, because I have a nephew who has experienced this even in a majority Black school, but the low expectations that a lot of educators have on our kids. They will see that we might learn differently or prefer to socialize differently, and they'll come and look at our scores as we come into the class or our previous grades and assume that means that we aren't as intelligent, and as such, they won't push us as hard. That's a lack of cultural awareness. We perform better as Black people culturally when you expect something more of me. There are kids I see now when I'm going to back to school events in my community, or I'm out in the streets going shopping or whatever, and as soon as they see me, their demeanor changes. If a kid isn't doing as well as he think he should have, or she should have, they are ashamed to tell me what they're doing. That's because of the expectation I have for them. And based on what you were telling me about that story, that's what it seems it is. And that's what it feels like. And what I don't even want to say feels like, that's what I know we need to have more of from our kids, especially in this moment.
Dr. Samuel DeWitt Proctor called it America's moral parenthesis. A parenthesis obviously designates a certain part of a sentence or emphasis to show something that should be plainly understood, but is not necessarily understood. Leaving the parenthesis open does not close the sentence. What does Dr. Proctor mean when he says America's moral parenthesis? He means this. He means that when we come into contact with these young students, we must first agree that equality is possible. Secondly, we must within ourselves as individuals identify the optimum human condition that we can learn, that we must learn, that we must leave all of the excuses at the door of the classroom about whatever the circumstances are that brought us to the door of the classroom. Whatever the excuses are that brought you to the front door of Tuskegee Institute as a freshman, whatever your excuses are, here is the optimum human condition. No bonnets, no slippers, no one's coming to class in their bedtime clothing. No one's bringing a dog to class. No one's going to be disruptive in class. The optimum human condition, and then call everyone to embrace it. And that's difficult because everybody got some kind of special right to do whatever it is that they do, but it doesn't meet the normative standards of our expectation. And the other side of it is, Brother Krim, if some of these issues were handled at home before you got to class, before you walked into the freshman dorm or freshman institution at a major college in this country, we wouldn't even be discussing it. But the fact of the matter is, we must agree first that equality is possible. That we must assume responsibility as adults to look at young people and identify the optimum human condition, and then call everybody, black, white, striped, or polka dots, to embrace it. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Chicago Southside residents are protesting a proposed development at the former Southworks steel plant. Opponents fear it could become a data center, while Black Mayor Brandon Johnson says the developer describes it as a research campus.
They would be strictly bound to the executive order that I have put forth to provide stronger regulations.
Johnson says any data center would violate his moratorium on new facilities. HBCU Virginia State University President Makola Abdullah is responding after 5 people were shot outside a campus dorm over the weekend. Police arrested 19-year-old Cameron Harris, who faces several felony charges. And opening statements are underway in Las Vegas in the murder trial of Dwayne Keefedy Davis, who is accused of orchestrating Tupac Shakur's 1996 killing. Davis faces life in prison without parole if convicted. Get BIN News now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Think It Up is an initiative to activate student-powered, teacher-led learning projects. Students and teachers, how can you spark great learning experiences in your classrooms today? Join at thinkitup.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
It might be time to sound the alarm for the Dodgers. They lost 3 out of 4 games at home over the weekend to the Milwaukee Brewers. Their 6-2 loss Sunday dropped them 3 games behind Milwaukee for the best record in Major League Baseball and a half game behind the Atlanta Braves. Milwaukee has the tiebreaker advantage over the Dodgers if they end up tied at the end of the regular season. That means the Dodgers would not have home field advantage if they meet up with Milwaukee in the playoffs. And if the Dodgers don't straighten up, they could be playing in the wild card round. The Dodgers are 13-18 since they had MLB's best record at 61-33 on July 10th. They're 5-11 in their last 16 games and 9-13 since they hung out with Trump at the White House on July 23rd. The Dodgers are not playing like a team that has visions of winning a 3rd straight World Series. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
In a world full of noise, one station keeps it real. KBLA Talk 1580, where the conversation goes deeper, the voices sound like yours, and the issues that matter most to our community take center stage. Progressive, powerful, unapologetically us. Whether you're driving through the city or tuning in from your home or office, join the public square. KBLA Talk 1580. Your home for talk that enlightens, encourages, and empowers. Listen live on our free KBLA 1580 app, on our website at KBLA1580.com, or on your radio dial at 1580 AM.
Don't be anxious or confused about AI. Take control of your career when you get the skills to tackle real business problems and design specialized solutions. HR Dive reported that entry-level talent with applied AI credentials can receive up to a 25% salary boost. But where do you find training that you can trust? Future-proof your career and deliver more value with Humans Lead the Way AI. Their hybrid learning courses use practical definitions, real-world examples, and strategic insights to help you and your team understand AI with confidence. No magic, no hacks, no shortcuts. Just practical knowledge that helps you use AI more successfully. Don't wait. AI can never replace people who know how to use it well. Register for courses today at humansleadtheway.com. That's humansleadtheway.com.
All I need is one mic.
With the KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dionne Raymond, Justice Correspondent and host of the Justice Files. For years, LA City Councilman Curran Price has served his district. And for years, he's been under a legal cloud which, frankly, looks thinner every time it's tested in court. Last Friday, a Superior Court judge refused to throw out the corruption case against Price. That's true. But listen to what the judge actually said while doing it. Judge Larry Paul Fidler called this not a great case. Not our words, his. Price's attorney, standing right there in the courtroom, said it plainly. In denying our motion, the court acknowledged that this is not a great case. We agree. Now, that's not a ringing endorsement of a prosecution. That's a judge saying, essentially, there's just enough here to send it to a jury. Barely. The ruling itself says nothing about guilt. It's not proof of wrongdoing. What it is a low bar, cleared by a thin margin, on evidence the court itself has called circumstantial. Councilman Price has pleaded not guilty. He denies the allegations. And after 3 terms representing his district, he's term limited and on his way out of office, regardless of how this case ends. Which raises a fair question. What exactly is served? By dragging a longtime champion for working families in South Los Angeles through a trial that even the presiding judge doesn't sound confident about. We're not saying elected officials should not be held accountable. They should. But accountability means something different from a prosecution that struggles to convince the very judge overseeing it. Curran Price deserves his day in court, and he deserves the presumption of innocence any one of us would want for ourselves or a loved one, especially when the bench itself has doubts. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dion Raymond, Justice Correspondent and host of the Justice Files. As always, we welcome your feedback.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Quality.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. It's Moving Mountain Mondays. As such, we are with Ernest Krim, Emmy-nominated producer, has created content for companies such as Hulu, HBO, Disney, Paramount, and the History Channel. Professor Krim, welcome forward to the show.
Thanks again for having me, brother.
Brother Krim, what is going on right now? This is the first week of school. What can parents expect? What can schools expect? I know, for example, if you're in any one of these flood zones, a number of these students are being displaced right now because of weather, meaning that some of them are going to be starting late, and that could trickle down and impact the rest of the school year. Your thoughts, Ernest, and can you share with us as a teacher what's going through parents and the minds of our students right now?
Well, for a lot of parents, in some ways, it's a sigh of relief because you've been sitting at home all day, or maybe you've been picking up kids, from the summer program, summer camps. If you work at home like myself, it's been quite an adjustment to have to answer to the knocks at the door while you're in your office doing things and stuff like that. So for some parents, it can be a sigh of relief to have the kids back doing something, engaged, throughout the day with their friends and their peers and things like that. But what we have to also remember as parents too is, for one, I would say the broader responsibility we have as parents throughout the summer is to ensure that our kids are not going back to school out of shape, is what I would say, right? Imagine if you played in the NBA, and even if you won the championship, you played to like mid to late June, and you don't touch a basketball again until the season starts the next season, right? You will be out of shape. And we can see that visibly with athletes, right? You might gain weight, you might not be able to go up and down the court, but it's the same thing mentally, same thing psychologically. We have kids who have probably been, my kids included, been staying up late, talking to friends and playing games and texting all night and things like that. And excuse me, then all of a sudden they're expected to go back and have some form of discipline and restraint. So as parents, I would say this moving forward, let's make sure that we do give our kids a break over the summer, but that we have systems in place to still keep them in alignment. Maybe we should take a couple days out the week or 3 days out the week where they are expected to still wake up and do something. Now, 6 to 7 hours a day is a little bit much, right? Most studies will show, especially if you do homeschooling, you can get everything done in probably 2 to 3 hours. Something I did this summer was I made my kids read, and I would incentivize it. I have that, privilege to make them, if you get to this many hours, this many half hours, then we'll do something extra that you might want to do, right? Have conversations with your kids. I subscribe to physical newspapers. I make my kids read newspapers. I make my kids understand what's going on around the world, right? So that when they come back in fall, they don't have that deficit of maybe being behind in learning. And always prepare your kids for that next grade that they're going to. So if they end in 7th, have them reading, and I would honestly go above that, 9th grade, because we don't want to prepare them for the next level. We want to prepare them beyond that, right? But now that we're going back, we need to be asking our educators a lot of questions. My question for educators all the time is, how do you make sure you're exposing our kids to, to diverse people in history? What are you doing to prepare our kids for life outside of school? Educators have to know you're teaching the whole child. All right. Our kids don't come back to school not having experienced any of this trauma. Where we are right now in the Chicago area, I saw ICE going into schools in East Chicago, Indiana, the first couple days of school. Like, these issues exist here. We're talking about tornadoes. We're talking in Cali, earthquakes, wildfires. We have kids who may not have running water, right? Access to taking a shower, access to food. So I want educators to be checking in with the kids. I want them to make sure they're spending that first week or so getting to know them, getting to understanding what their summer was. Because before you can actually teach the kid, you have to know the kid. You have to make sure you're meeting them where they are. And for parents, let's be as proactive as possible. These are our babies. This is our future. And this is a person that you're trusting them with for the next 9 months that you don't even know. So keep that in mind. Stay in constant contact. I would say get some type of routine, whether it be once a week, twice a week, maybe once a month, where you're emailing all of those teachers, not because they called you first and said your child did something bad or good, but just to check in. Because I'm telling you, when I was in the class, those parents I knew, yes, this is just like when you a waiter or waitress. Your kid gonna get a little better service, just being real. Because I know that if I don't check back in with you, your parent is gonna be hitting me up saying what's going on.
That's really interesting, because you're making me think back about 55 years right now, 45 years for sure. And that is the realization that many of my teachers from middle school through high school actually demanded that we have a summer reading list. I mean, we came back to school kicking. We didn't come back to school exhausted from everything we did during the summer. Can't believe we back in class again. No. There was homework assignments on day one. There were reports that were coming close to being due, and expectations from the teachers who actually gave us summer reading assignments because they recognized exactly what you said. You cannot ask an athlete to put a basketball down and wait till the beginning of the next season to come in cold off of no practice. And that's true of reading too. I mean, that's true of thinking too. It's true of counting, arithmetic. It's true of that too. You have to stay in shape for it. But we don't see the summer as part of a training process to stay in shape for entering school in August. And you brought back some memories, and I doubt it very seriously if that's the case. In fact, let me tell you something. I've been watching, a lot of school boards, school superintendents, they're really, really heavy into the politics now, fighting for more funding and fighting for this. But I don't hear the little techniques that are necessary from any of that kind of leadership for what it really takes for my child to be successful in your system. That doesn't make the news. And of course, in my generation, we came home to Sesame Street. We came home to the electric company.
Right.
We came home to Zoom. And by the way, the first time I ever heard the name Morgan Freeman, he was on the electric company. Walking us through our alphabets. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Krim.
No, that's something else that parents and teachers have to consider. There are states across the country, Illinois included, where cell phones are banned now, right? So we have to prepare for making up for the years we lost our children to that cell phone. We're talking from 2012 to now 2026, where the endpoint is coming. So we're talking about a 15-year, the whole generation, mostly Gen Z, some Gen Alpha, where these kids were reading, but they weren't reading books, reading phones, text messages, Snapchats, scrolling all day, not taking the time to sit still and process. Kids are getting phones younger and younger, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. They're not going home to watch and engage with something educational. And if they are, it's being played on a loop on a streaming site. One of the things I'm noticing from my young kids, my toddlers, is this idea of everything having to be instant. I want our educators and our kids to start boring our kids more, make them patient. They expect everything to happen instantaneously because you get it that way online. So if we can't make our kids understand how patience ties into this struggle, then we'll keep going in cycles with what we're dealing with now.
I appreciate you, Ernest. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. It's back to school. We're looking at the lens of our tunist, why we experience one thing on one side of town, and even on our side of town, we experience something different. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The midterm elections are upon us. It is voting season once again. Common Cause's motto is fighting for the democracy we deserve. In service of that goal, Common Cause puts its state and national policy expertise, massive network of grassroots supporters, and nonpartisan approach into action to strengthen our democracy against the challenges we face today. They work at every level of government on priorities that impact each of our lives, like defending the right to vote, limiting big money's influence on our elections, holding public officials accountable, and more. Common Cause is a nonpartisan grassroots organization dedicated to upholding the core values of American democracy. They seek to empower all people to make their voices heard in the political process. This election may be the most important one ever. If you'd like to make a donation or volunteer in service to the Constitution, please visit commoncause.org. That's commoncause.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
Let's begin now. Are you looking for quality child care? If you are, boy, do I have the place for you. Holy Trinity Child Care Center in the City of Champions is where your little ones become big thinkers. Music that makes their little heart shine, as well as dietitian-made meals every day. I guess it's safe to say your babies will be well-fed as well as well-led. We accept bundles of joy from 18 months to 5 years old. Subsidies are accepted, and we're just minutes from the legendary SoFi Stadium. Miss Shepard's team at 9300 Crenshaw Boulevard is now enrolling. All you got to do is call 323-757-4850 or visit HolyTrinityCCC.com. At Holy Trinity, we champion your child's heart, mind, and spirit every single day.
Just in case you missed our Procrastination Crenshaw Town Hall.
My name is Asaka Umoja. I'm with the Hyde Park Organizational Partnership for Empowerment, which is at the southern end of Crenshaw. And this community has been greatly impacted. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we're most concerned about is just being totally neglected. And what I mean is being excluded from the process. When this project first started, they should have made sure that our organization, since we were most impacted, was in there. So we've been excluded, and we've seen commercial properties be taken for art projects. And we're very concerned about these are spaces that could help build economic growth and development in the community. And what this community needs more of is economic development, not art. I mean, I like art. It's a good thing. But they're putting the cart before the horse, because without a solid economic foundation, what they are calling cultural tourism absolutely has no significance and no meaning. And this community is going under if we don't stop and do something to help build that economic foundation and support the businesses that are the tax base for this community to build the kind of services that we need. And the response from our leadership is totally inadequate.
Holding them accountable. We're KBLA Talk 1580.
Self-destruction.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Volley drops the beat.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. It's Moving Mountain Mondays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Ernest Krim is our regular contributor.
Come on and listen to me. KBLA.
On KBLA Talk 1580, right here on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Ernest, welcome forward to the show.
Thanks again for having me, brother.
Hey, Ernest, I want to establish some standards, some expectations that I think matter. I think they should ban do-rags and bonnets and pajamas in high school. I don't think any children should be going to school looking unkempt. We're preparing kids for college. And by the time they get to college, they ought to know that at a collegiate level, there are expectations. And beyond college, when they're seeking a job, they ought to have an appreciation for what it means to be prepared, to be presentable, to speak the King's English. This is not anti-us. I'm down with us. But let me tell you something I've also noticed. Whether you're in Los Angeles, in Crenshaw, or whether you are in Atlanta, Georgia, or some of these communities in New York, where we have created some amazing talent in terms of our rappers and rap genre. Almost all of them in my generation, since the genre was relatively new when I was young, started out from the streets. They all had a certain behavior, a certain swag, but you know what? I now see them, those rappers in my generation, showing up at the college graduations of their own children. And their children are not wearing do-rags, bonnets, or anything like that. They are the opposite of everything I remember growing up that their parents were. Because they themselves want their children to be better and live better and have a better life than the one they had growing up. That's not an unreasonable expectation. And let me tell you one other thing before I get probably thrown off the radio for this one. I got a 25-year-old daughter. I don't care who you are rapping. Bro, if I see you grinding on my daughter at a concert, like she's out of her mind for allowing that to happen, I just find that unacceptable. I find it unacceptable for my child, and I find it unacceptable for your child. How would you like to wake up and look on social media at some celebrity grinding on your child? I find that unacceptable. And we need to raise our standards and our expectations of what that looks like, what that feels like from the parent's perspective. Ernest?
Oh man, you going in, brother. I'll tell you this, from a high school perspective, it's difficult. And I'll tell you why. Now, for 1 year, I wouldn't have my kids doing that. But I also, in a high school setting, because it's a public school, we're taking kids from various different backgrounds. And the issue that we often have come into, when I was in the classroom, for instance, we had 80 to 90% students low income. The staff did not reflect the student population. So what we often saw was when we had those types of policies in place, it was disproportionately legislated and it targeted our kids to where it would be something that was not just, hey, pull you to the side, make sure you do this. We had situations that would elevate to levels it should not have because of a child's attire. And sometimes we would often find, too, that these are children who come from, because of the low income status, backgrounds where that might actually be one of the only options they have. It looks different in college, though, I believe, because, of course, too, this isn't a public school setting anymore, even if it is a public state school. So that's the only issue I have with that, because I think that it could be difficult in a high school setting. But I do think that it's possible to have that understanding while still holding students to a high standard, which means that, going back to one of my previous points, when you know a kid, you know what they've been through, when you know their family background, or even how we used to be back in the day when a teacher would know the child's family, then you understand if that's an issue for you, let's figure this out, because I don't want you representing yourself that way. If there's a larger socioeconomic issue, then this is something that the school community should see fit to come address.
But Ernest, it's not just a function from my perspective of representing yourself. You really are an ambassador for the race. I mean, that's Jackie Robinson, suit and tie every day on his way to a Branch Rickey baseball game. That's Jesse Owens, suit and tie every single day with dignity, standing up to Hitler, running the race and winning gold medals and bringing them home and still not getting his hand shaken by a U.S. president. It's Martin Luther King Jr. when he was marching dungarees, but when he was preaching and carrying himself to lectures, one of the finest dressers of a man in his era, even Malcolm X. So the ability to choose isn't a function of poverty. I mean, you can dress up a pair of jeans and you can tell your neighbor, man, this is all I got, but this is my Sunday's best. That's fine. I don't think there are many pastors today who would turn you away for that, but there was an era of pastors who had to grow into an understanding of that socioeconomic condition. Ernest, we only have a couple of minutes before we come forward, but they are all yours as our regular teacher on the program to offer our students, our family, and our nation a word of hope.
Yeah, man. I have as a millennial, I'll quote J. Cole and say, I'm a middle child in one of his most prominent songs. I saw the shift. I was a Chicago kid who was partly raised in sports anyway by Michael Jordan, who dressed, as you said. Then I was also raised by Allen Iverson, who is, as you know, completely opposite, right? I think that what our generation has, and those who come after the Gen Z and Gen Alpha, much of what they do is an expression of resistance, even though they might not realize it, because they have felt and seen oftentimes that even when we dress a certain way, it still doesn't feel like we're accepted. And I think that what I can do a better job of communicating to our children too, which I think is an important lesson, is dressing, acting, or being a certain way is not us saying that we want you to be acceptable to an outside community. We understand that you should have high standards and high dignity as a reflection of who we are as people in this country, not because we want to be acceptable to the white community. It's not approval of them. It's we hold ourselves to high standards, and we have always held ourselves to high standards. Look at some of the images of how we dressed and presented ourselves prior to enslavement. So that lens, if we can for a second step outside of it and look at ourselves how we have always been, we'll understand that we have always been regal people who deserve the best and should demand the best.
Dinah Washington, Diane Carroll, Aretha Franklin, Mahalia Jackson, the women of that generation, Coretta Scott King, the women of that generation and how they carried themselves mattered. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You've been listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward, It's still Moving Mountain Mondays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Reverend Teresa Terry Hord Owens will be our regular contributor and guest, and we're going to talk about plagiarism and the double standard for some folks in the academy that's very different than how we're treated. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Chicago Southside residents are protesting a proposed development at the former Southworks steel plant. Opponents fear it could become a data center, while Black Mayor Brandon Johnson says the developer describes it as a research campus.
They would be strictly bound to the executive order that I have put forth to provide stronger regulations.
Johnson says any data center would violate his moratorium on new facilities. HBCU Virginia State University President Makola Abdullah is responding after 5 people were shot outside a campus dorm over the weekend. Police arrested 19-year-old Cameron Harris, who faces several felony charges. And opening statements are underway in Las Vegas in the murder trial of Dwayne Keefedy Davis, who was accused of orchestrating Tupac Shakur's 1996 killing. Davis faces life in prison without parole if convicted. Describes it as a research campus.
They would be strictly bound to the executive order that I have put forth to provide stronger regulations.
Johnson says any data center would violate his moratorium on new facilities. HBCU Virginia State University President Makola Abdullah is responding after 5 people were shot outside a campus dorm over the weekend. Police arrested 19-year-old Cameron Harris, who faces several felony charges. And opening statements are underway in Las Vegas in the murder trial of Dwayne Keefedy Davis, who was accused of orchestrating Tupac Shakur's 1996 killing. Davis faces life in prison without parole if convicted. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Think It Up is an initiative to activate student-powered, teacher-led learning projects. Students and teachers, how can you spark great learning experiences in your classrooms today? Join at thinkitup.org.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
It might be time to sound the alarm for the Dodgers. They lost 3 out of 4 games at home over the weekend to the Milwaukee Brewers. Their 6-2 loss Sunday dropped them 3 games behind Milwaukee for the best record in Major League Baseball and a half game behind the Atlanta Braves. Milwaukee has the tiebreaker advantage over the Dodgers if they end up tied at the end of the regular season. That means the Dodgers would not have home field advantage if they meet up with Milwaukee in the playoffs. And if the Dodgers don't straighten up, they could be playing in the wild card round. The Dodgers are 13-18 since they had MLB's best record at 61-33 on July 10th. They're 5-11 in their last 16 games and 9-13 since they hung out with Trump at the White House on July 23rd. The Dodgers are not playing like a team that has visions of winning a 3rd straight World Series. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. My big mama used to say that there are 24 hours in a day, 12 hours to mind your business, and 12 hours to leave other folks' business alone. So let's talk about our business, Crenshaw business. For over 5 years now, the good people of the Crenshaw corridor have lived in a gated community, but not by choice. Gates, fences, barricades, limited street access, closed lots, and then some. By now, you've heard the stories from the folk who've lived this nightmare. Business owners have lost customers. A charter school lost students. A veterinarian lost clients. Churches have lost members. And still, Procrastination Crenshaw sits unfinished. And when I say sits unfinished, I mean sits unfinished. Nobody was seduced by the Jedi mind trick they tried to play when they ran that headline on the front page of a local black newspaper about the project restarting in weeks. I mean, come see for yourself. The only trucks on Crenshaw are deconstruction trucks. It took a minute, but to her credit, LA Mayor Karen Bass showed up and she's leaning in on getting our parking back. But think about this for just a second. LA is not Chocolate City, and yet we are blessed to have a black mayor and a black city council president. But where is the black city council president? Where is Marquise Harris Dawson? This is his project in his district, but he has been strangely quiet. Did you notice in the recent Los Angeles Times story about Procrastination Crenshaw that neither Marquise Harris Dawson nor Destination Crenshaw had a word to say on the record? The silence was deafening. When people ask me why the silence, all I can say is, good question. As a reminder, the Crenshaw Corridor community sent him a letter, and it laid out real demands: a public timeline, relief for the businesses that have suffered, and an audit. At the moment, the last one matters most: the audit. Here's the thing: the foundation money, the private donations, that's their business. But this project is also funded by city money, state money, and federal money. I refer you back to the front page story in that black newspaper where they all talked about this. Go read it again. In any event, it's your money. And when public money goes into a $100 million project that still sits unfinished, the public has a right to see where every dollar went. Contracts, budgets, payments, schedules. That's not too much to ask. Again, it's your money. Our letter gave Mr. Harris Dawson a deadline, Friday, September 4th, to respond. The clock is ticking, Mr. President. 12 hours to mind the public's business. And this is one of them. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
How did you want it?
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. It's still Moving Mountain Mondays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, the Faith Not to Fall, with Reverend Teresa Terry Ford Owens, General Minister and President of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. I would like to opine right here for just one moment on the unscanned. I want to hear this editorial. Let me take you back to 2002. That year, the two most famous historians in America were both caught plagiarizing. Within 3 weeks of each other, Stephen Ambrose, the man who wrote Band of Brothers, had copied from another historian's book, and then investigators found more of it across his other work. 2 weeks later, Doris Kearns Goodwin, same magazine, same charge, and this time there was something extra. Her publisher had quietly paid off the woman she copied from 15 years earlier, and nobody had been told. Now, what happened to them? Godwin lost a few speaking dates. A university took back a commencement invitation. She stepped away from a news program for a while, and then she published Team of Rivals. Steven Spielberg turned it into a movie. She published 3 more bestsellers. She went back on television, and today she's one of the people this country calls on to explain the American character to us. She's more famous now than she was before she got caught. There was a third man that year, Joseph Ellis, Pulitzer Prize winner. It came out that he had been telling his student for years that he fought in Vietnam. He never went. He served at West Point, and he told those war stories in his own course on the Vietnam War. He was suspended for 1 year. He gave up his chair. Then he came back to the faculty. He kept his Pulitzer Prize, and he published 6 more books. Now, I want to be fair because one man that year really did fall, Michael Belsiles at Emory. He lost his job and then took back his Bancroft Prize. But here's the difference. Belsiles didn't borrow somebody's paragraph. He was found to have falsified the historical record itself. That's a different order of offense. That's called fraud. So there's your 2002. 4 white men, 1 fell for fraud. 3 others came back, and 2 of them came back even bigger. And here's the thing I want you to hold on to. Nobody hunted them. There was no fund set up to audit them. There were no anonymous complaints filed within 2 universities at the same time. Nobody ran their dissertations through software as part of a campaign. Somebody read their books and noticed. Now, come forward 21 years, December 2023. Claudine Gay testified before Congress. Within weeks, activists published plagiarism allegations against her dissertation, a document that had been sitting in a Harvard library since 1997. Harvard reviewed it and listened closely to what Harvard actually found, inadequate citation, duplicative language, and no violation of its research misconduct standard, she resigned in 28 days. Now let me give you the comparison that ought to be on the front of every page in the nation. In 2007, the president of Southern Illinois University, Glenn Poshard, was accused of plagiarism in his dissertation. I was in Congress with Glenn Poshard. A faculty panel looked at it and found citation errors caused by carelessness, not intent. That is substantively the same finding Harvard made about Claudine Gay. The SEIU board voted unanimously to keep him. The chairman called him a man of personal integrity. He served 7 more years as president, 28 days, 7 years, same finding. And then this month, Jason Arday, 41 years old, the youngest Black professor in the history of the University of Cambridge. In July, 3 national British newspapers ran investigations into his thesis, his publications, and his personal history in the days and in the space of 9 days. He resigned on August the 5th. He was found dead at his home on August the 14th. And a colleague at Cambridge who spoke with him in his final hours says Arday believed there was a playbook being used against Black academics and that he named Claudine Gay. So here's the editorial. I've gone through 200 years of this, and all in that record, I cannot find one white academic who was driven to his death over a plagiarism accusation, not one. They were embarrassed and they went back to work and they kept on selling, but it was worse than the punishment. And this is my last point. When a white scholar fails, he falls alone. Nobody looked at Stephen Ambrose and concluded that white historians can't do original research. Nobody proposed auditing every white woman's dissertation after Goodwin, a man who archived at Emory, and nobody went and checked the rest of the faculty. But within 90 days of Claudine Gay's resignation, 7 scholars had been accused, and 6 of them were Black. The man running the campaign was counting out loud. The 4th Black female scholar at Harvard resigns. And last May, he stopped counting individuals and said it plain, that Black women plagiarize at a higher rate than everybody else. That's the difference. Their disgrace stayed personal. Ours gets entered into as evidence against people who were never accused of anything. One last fact, and I'll let it go. I know my time is up. The most famous formula in Western philosophy, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, is credited to Hegel on 10,000 posters. Hegel never wrote it. Scholars corrected the record in print in 1958. That misattribution has been circulating for 189 years. No investigation, no committee, no career touched. A rule that applies to everybody is a rule. A rule that applies to some of us is a sentence. Looking for a defendant. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More on KBLA Talk 1580 with Terry Hort Owens when we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
In a world full of noise, one station keeps it real. KBLA Talk 1580, where the conversation goes deeper, the voices sound like yours, and the issues that matter most to our community take center stage. Progressive, powerful, unapologetically us. Whether you're driving through this city or tuning in from your home or office, join the public square. KBLA Talk 1580, your home for talk that enlightens, encourages, and empowers. Listen live on our free KBLA 1580 app, on our website at KBLA1580.com, or on your radio dial at 1580 AM.
Unapologetically progressive.
The KBLA 1580 app puts the realest conversations right in your pocket. Stream live wherever you are in the world. No static. No searching the dial. A crystal clear connection 24/7, exactly when you want it. We recommend that you keep automatic updates enabled. Set it and forget it. So the app stays up to date with store requirements, bug fixes, and new features as we roll them out. Download the KBLA 1580 app today and stay plugged into the conversation everyone's having.
Are you drowning in IRS tax debt?
With Civic Tax Relief, they were able to save me upwards of $80,000 that I would have had to pay had I not reached out to them.
Get ready for a toll-free hotline. Take advantage of new IRS tax forgiveness programs that may protect you from IRS collection agencies.
I owe the IRS $37,000.
They have the power to garnish your wages, put liens on your property, and levy your bank account. Civic Tax Relief can help protect you from the IRS.
Civic Tax Relief basically represented me against the IRS. By the time everything was completed, I didn't know the IRS anything.
Find out about the Fresh Start program that is now available through Civic Tax Relief. Civic Tax Relief's special tax hotline can help you discover all the relief programs available for free.
I would recommend anyone who has a tax problem to contact Civic Tax Relief.
Just call 800-285-3500, 800-285-3500. Don't wait. Call now. 800-285-3500, 800-285-3500.
Just in case you missed our Procrastination Crenshaw Town Hall.
My name is Khalifa Bey. I am the founder of the South LA Bureau of Tourism and Trade. And how this is impacting me is that I can't promote it. I won't promote it. I hear a lot of talk about everybody. Accountability is responsibility. Change your vote. Change the vote. I know there's a lot of Democrats in this room, and I get all that. But if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result, it ain't gonna happen. And it's not about Democrat, Republican. It's about getting what we need to get done. That's what it is for me, because this is deliberate. This of our communities. You look at Chicago, you look at all the Black communities were built by us. We're in the same condition. So to me, it's by design. And if we don't do something to change the vote to get to what we need, stop having these meetings.
Making sure they stick to the truth. We're KBLA, Talk 1580.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Folly drops the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to the need.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special regular contributor, Reverend Terry Hord Owens, the General Minister and President of the Christian Church, the Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. Reverend Terry Hord Owens, welcome forward.
Hello, my friend. It's good to be here.
It's a pleasure to see you, a pleasure to be with you, and I'm so grateful for your regular contribution to this show, your show, The Faith Not to Fall. Madam President, first, initially, your reaction to my editorial.
1,000% agree with it. I had similar, just the history of the litany, the way you framed it together. As a Harvard College alum, I was part of a large group of Black alumni who signed a petition and protested what was happening to Claudette Gay, the former president of Harvard. Scholars that we hold in high regard, from Joseph Ellis to Doris Kearns Goodwin and other folks. What happened to the young professor at the University of Cambridge? I think I really resonated with your saying that with white scholars, it has been kept personal, and it's not only attributed to as a general attribute, right, of people of color, scholars of color, but we're hunted, right? The vitriolic nature of the press and how people are then lambasted, and their very integrity on every front is impugned, when in many cases it could be, I'm sure you have written a paper where you weren't as careful with the citation, or you can get in trouble, as you know, from editing a book with one editor has one style guide and another editor has another style guide. And they can make pronouncements as to whether or not you know what you're doing based on the fact that you don't use the same style guide. I just went through that with my book. So it's just this ongoing trend that we have in America of devaluing the intellect and devaluing the respect of Black people's minds and even their bodies. If he was indeed guilty of plagiarism, it should not have cost him his life. Should not have cost him his life.
Madam President, let me ask you this question. The Jason R. Day situation has obviously touched across Black scholasticism from one end of the world to the other. I've had scholars in South Africa contacting me about that. Many of them educated at Cambridge, many of them educated at Leicester in the UK and at some of the major, if you will, scholastic institutions in the world, including Harvard and Yale. And they too are crying foul on this question of misattribution of statistics and or misattribution of data. Why is Jason R. Day so different in this space on this hunting question?
I do think the UK context has something to do with it. We know how Meghan Markle has shared stories. Whatever you think of her, she has shared stories of how vicious the press has been about her own racial heritage. I think that countries in Europe have a harder time, are clearly demonstrably having a harder time with immigrant populations and people who are not of European descent in their context. And I think we ignore at our peril the tendency, even in these European environments, to say, oh, it's not racism. Well, no, yeah, actually it is. And they're not any more equipped than Americans are to parse the truth very carefully. The British press is vicious, period, in a way that's, I think, different even from the American press. But I think that that's part of it. You've got a young African American scholar. He's wearing braids or locks. We still have particular images in the collective consciousness that are degraded as being less than, in so many ways, less than beautiful or handsome, less than smart, less than intelligent, less than acceptable. And it's all these things that I think get compounded upon one another and result in just vicious treatment by the press and the public.
I posted on Facebook the other day something about the uniqueness of God's gift for every single human being, that like Howard Thurman and Benjamin Mays believed, that every single person has something unique. And Howard Thurman said that we had to find that unique calling, that unique voice. And one scholar went so far as to say that if you do not accomplish what God has given for you to accomplish, it never will be done. Now, the reason I say that, he doesn't say that someone else is going to get the same thing. No, if you don't do what you have been assigned to do, it will never be done because you never heard the inward voice of your authenticity. I'm wondering on this question of scholarship for Black scholars, if there is this need to seek the approval of the academy itself by quoting all of these white scholars who don't share our experience, don't share our reality, and what is the resistance to the legitimate uniqueness of the African American experience? The voice, for example, that Hannah Nicole Jones found, the voice that Abraham Kendi found, the voice, I'm going to be candid with you, the voice that Tavis Smiley found in these national meetings that he was holding, bringing Black people together and holding leaders accountable. That unique voice is unique to who you are, Madam President.
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the challenges that we all face is that our history, if we're not held and regarded as being fully human and respected and have the dignity and assumed to have the same potential for intellect as any other person, then everything we do becomes inferior. As an undergraduate at Harvard, I was an African American Studies minor, and we had to write a thesis our junior year. Josephine Wright, famed ethnomusicologist, taught our research methods course, and she drilled into us, when you choose to write about Black people or to do research about Black people in any regard, your work is going to immediately be held as suspect and inferior. And she really stressed that we had to have the utmost care with every single detail and point of method, citations, etc., that we were engaged in, because, I mean, that was a time when we were still fighting for the legitimacy of that department. My dad's own career parallels the growth of the legitimacy, right, even of studying Black people, let alone the legitimacy of using them as resources in research. So this is another way in which racism just has its nasty claws into our society. I know young Black scholars who were like, "Oh, I'm not going to study that. I didn't come here to study Black people," as though Black people are not a legitimate topic for research and discourse. In fact,
it's unique, Madam President. It's the unique scholarship. The very thing that you're running from allows you to be unique. For example, if I were getting an economics degree and I had to write a thesis on my PhD in economics, I'm either going to run it through the lens of Keynesianism, laissez-faire economics, or maybe even Adam Smith. But you better believe that every white economist in this country has run every conceivable algorithm through their various approaches to supply side and demand side economics. Now, if I were at Harvard today and I were writing a thesis in economics, I would talk about the disproportionate impact of tariffs on the Negro people.
Yes.
You're talking about unique scholarship and something else. You don't have to worry about no white economists writing that thesis.
Correct. And so it's not, that's always like, what questions? That's the question scholarship. What unique questions? Not only your own unique voice, but what are you exploring that others have not? What's the unique nature of your research? And we all know that the culture, the sociology, the politics, the history of African Americans, not just in this country, but on the African continent, is woefully underrepresented in the literature. And because we are deemed inferior, anything about us is deemed not worthy of the attention, and scholarship is questioned if that is not what you're about. I watch some top scholars not be considered for slots at the University of Chicago Divinity School because they worked solely on the issues surrounding Black liberation theology. There was one scholar who was there, and he was sort of the token, so they could say that they did that work, but they weren't embracing anybody else and some large names that should be on that faculty today that were discounted because of the nature of their scholarship.
Well, I'm 61 years old. At this stage of my life, I probably have more yesterdays than tomorrow, and I'm continuing my more than 13-year work on a single subject matter and a single discovery that I made while incarcerated that is unique to me. I can't explain why in 250 years of American history, no one else has discovered it. But this I share with those who are hearing my voice. To follow my work with scholarship will be unique for you. And publicly, make sure you keep this program. You will be able to say that Jesse Jackson Jr. gave me permission to follow up on his work, and there will be no misattribution. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. We're having a conversation with Reverend Terry Hoard Owens, who is a scholar. She's not only the general minister and president of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ of the United States and Canada, she is also the second woman to lead a major denomination. And since her election as a person of color, Reverend Hoard Owens' ministry actively reflects the disciples' priority of being an anti-racist church. There's a lot of scholarship that can be written, by the way, in the anti-racist space, including but not limited to, Reverend, your book, Staying at the Table. Share with us about that scholarship and why it's unique.
It's unique not only because of the lens that I bring to it, but in a position that I hold where I can call people to be accountable to the very priorities that we have set for decades to be an anti-racist church, and grounding that both in biblical understanding, but also in a theology that reverences every human being as being made in the image of God, and all the changes that we're working on. If that's who we say we are, so I say be the church we say we are. If we're truly an anti-race church, then we have to take that seriously, acknowledge the dearth of real stories and history about people of color in our own church, and recognize how the church has been complicit. But there's a theological and a spiritual set of pillars that we need to embrace in order to free ourselves from that historic racism. And that's really what the book is about.
Very proud of that book. We'll talk more about it when we come forward. And just before we do, I do want to say this. God has given each and every one of us something unique, something that is not plagiarizable. If we identify and find that inner voice, that inward force, you are authentic and you are unique. And that work belongs to you. And if you don't do it, no one ever will. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to The Faith Not to Fall with Reverend Terry Hord Owens. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. President Trump is defending his directive to scale back joint military exercises with South Korea.
We can't go around and protect all of these countries, especially when they're not there to help us.
He noted that roughly 39,000 American troops are stationed there and said the U.S. cannot continue protecting allies that are unwilling to help in return. Authorities are searching for a Black inmate who removed his GPS monitor and escaped a Los Angeles County reentry facility. 28-year-old Dejon Snell was last seen Sunday near Grand Avenue and 37th Street. He is serving a 6-year sentence for carjacking and robbery. And the Tupac Shakur murder trial is underway in Las Vegas. Prosecutors say Dwayne Keefe D. Davis helped arm the shooters, while his defense calls the case fiction and disputes details tied to his book. Davis faces life in prison if convicted. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Think It Up is an initiative to activate student-powered, teacher-led learning projects. Students and teachers, how can you spark great learning experiences in your classrooms today? Join at thinkitup.org.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
It might be time to sound the alarm for the Dodgers. They lost 3 out of 4 games at home over the weekend to the Milwaukee Brewers. Their 6-2 loss Sunday dropped them 3 games behind Milwaukee for the best record in Major League Baseball and a half game behind the Atlanta Braves. Milwaukee has the tiebreaker advantage over the Dodgers if they end up tied at the end of the regular season. That means the Dodgers would not have home field advantage if they meet up with Milwaukee in the playoffs. And if the Dodgers don't straighten up, they could be playing in the wild card round. The Dodgers are 13-18 since they had MLB's best record at 61-33 on July 10th. They're 5-11 in their last 16 games and 9-13 since they hung out with Trump at the White House on July 23rd. The Dodgers are not playing like a team that has visions of winning a third straight World Series. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Knock, knock, Capital One Bank guy.
Wow, Charles Barkley?
I just moved into the neighborhood. Can I borrow some Wi-Fi?
Sure, Chuck. That's what the Capital One Cafe is here for. Open 7 days a week.
Oh, can I use your ATM? My dog walker only takes cash.
Anything for a neighbor.
Can I try the catchphrase?
Sure. Take it for a spin.
There's no fees and minimums on Capital One checking accounts.
Nice, Chuck. I'll take it from here. Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Visit CapitalOne.com/bankguide for details. Capital One and a member FDIC.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, aka the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
All I need is one mic.
With the KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dionne Raymond, Justice Correspondent and host of the Justice Files. For years, LA City Councilman Curran Price has served his district. And for years, he's been under a legal cloud which, frankly, looks thinner every time it's tested in court. Last Friday, a Superior Court judge refused to throw out the corruption case against Price. That's true. But listen to what the judge actually said while doing it. Judge Larry Paul Fidler called this not a great case. Not our words, his. Price's attorney, standing right there in the courtroom, said it plainly. In denying our motion, the court acknowledged that this is not a great case. We agree. Now, that's not a ringing endorsement of a prosecution. That's a judge saying, essentially, there's just enough here to send it to a jury. Barely. The ruling itself says nothing about guilt. It's not proof of wrongdoing. What it is a low bar, cleared by a thin margin, on evidence the court itself has called circumstantial. Councilman Price has pleaded not guilty. He denies the allegations. And after 3 terms representing his district, he's term limited and on his way out of office, regardless of how this case ends. Which raises a fair question. What exactly is served? By dragging a longtime champion for working families in South Los Angeles through a trial that even the presiding judge doesn't sound confident about. We're not saying elected officials should not be held accountable. They should. But accountability means something different from a prosecution that struggles to convince the very judge overseeing it. Curran Price deserves his day in court, and he deserves the presumption of innocence any one of us would want for ourselves or a loved one, especially when the bench itself has doubts. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dionne Raymond, Justice Correspondent and host of the Justice Files. As always, we welcome your feedback.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Volley, drop the beat. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. Come on and talk with me. Come on and listen to me. KBLA Talk 15.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. We are very fortunate right here at KBLA to have Reverend Terry Hoard Owens, the General Minister and President of the Christian Church. Reverend Owens, welcome forward to the show.
Thanks. It's always good to be here.
Our producer has a really, really interesting story that she wants to bring forward to those of us who are listening on the West Coast, on the 405, the 101, the 5, the 10, the 118, or the 110. And I'm very much interested in Reverend Terry Hoard Owens' perspective on this. Let's roll this tape.
Make that site a memorial, a place of dignity to recognize these young men.
Phyllis Hammond found out last April that her uncle, Amos Hammond, was buried in this long-forgotten graveyard in Prince George's County. His grave marked only with a cinder block, and at 18 years old, he was among the hundreds of black boys buried this way on the grounds of a state-run juvenile detention facility.
It's heart-wrenching. It's heart-wrenching.
The graveyard is in Cheltenham at the former House of Reformation, a segregated state-run facility for boys dating back to the 1800s. There are some headstones that are in disrepair, and many of the graves appear to be unmarked. Hammond has her uncle's death certificate showing he died in 1921 at the House of Reformation. The cause? Acute peritonitis, which can lead to a life-threatening infection.
They try to have a good reasoning for most of the deaths that happen there. And, questionable, very questionable as to how these young men died. And especially when you're looking at over 300 and some young men.
Hammond described how she felt after visiting the graveyard for the very first time.
Gut-wrenching. I cried.
It inspired her to act, and now she's sitting on a newly formed state commission to study who the boys were and how they died. The group will make recommendations to the governor. Hammond wants to be a voice for the families.
Make that site a memorial, a place of dignity to recognize these young men, to bring awareness to the lives that they lived in that facility and how they died in those woods.
Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown chairs the commission, which met this week for the first time.
They were beaten, vetted, forced to labor. They were denied an education. They were malnourished and medically neglected.
There are many questions to answer. Should the bodies be exhumed? Should the graves be left alone? Should families be able to move remains to other burial sites?
I'm grateful to be on this journey. It's not going to be an easy journey. It hasn't been. I'm still grieving. All the families are still grieving. But I'm just so thankful that this has been revealed.
Madam President, I think it was James Baldwin who said that the Negro in America wakes up every single day in a constant state of rage. From the moment that we're born, we're fighting for justice. Most of our lives, we're fighting for some form of justice, fairness, and equality. And now in the state of Maryland, even fighting for justice for the dearly departed. This struggle that we're in, Madam President, is almost a curse. It follows us right to the grave, Madam President.
Yes, it follows us right to the grave, and it's another historic example of the huge loophole in the 13th Amendment that eradicated slavery except as a punishment for crime. And what is crime and how we treat particularly young Black men in particular. You heard it there, things that are still going on in correctional institutions and detention centers today. No access to education, no medical attention, poor living conditions, inhumane living conditions. How do 300 young men in a juvenile justice facility, how do they die? 300? What are they doing? How it boggles the mind. It makes absolutely no sense. But historically, the majority of society has accepted this because, again, we have dehumanized and considered Black lives as being inferior, almost animalistic. And so these young men, I mean, we're just now even getting to the point where we're thinking about the indigenous children that were sent away from the age of 5 to live in boarding schools. And Canada's far ahead of the United States in doing that. But the same thing happened with indigenous kids. They could die in these boarding schools and no one would report it. They certainly wouldn't report why it happened. Records we know were fraudulently recorded. And I, like Ms. Hammond, have no reason to believe that the death certificate information is any more accurate. We just can't trust that. We know that these young men were disrespected and treated as literally as animals who were just there to work. So that has continued to be sort of the culture of most of our institutions of correction in the United States. Black men and even anybody really in a were treated mainly than they should be. The very idea that we can get away with it because there's no other legal ramification or legal guardrail up to keep us from doing this. And Black people are always at the bottom of this poll.
Madam President, I understand that the governor, who obviously is African American, the first African American governor in the history of the state of Maryland, an African American attorney general, have obviously established a commission to look in the appropriate ways of how to honor these young men who died under these circumstances. But in a real sense, of all of the governors, even the governors pre-Declaration of Independence of the Maryland Territory, and those after the Constitution, when Maryland ultimately became a state and part of the Union, no governor has seen fit to uncover what Governor Wes Moore has seen to uncover, along with the Attorney General of that state, both African American. And in this moment, our vote really does matter on the question of justice, because when we get in these positions, there are things that we get to expose, that we get to uncover, that would normally remain, if you will, hidden figures.
Absolutely, because society allows it to be ignored. the quote unquote norms of white majority society allow it all to be ignored. And so unless we're speaking up and demanding, and I couldn't agree with you more, that we need to vote in every election. I don't care if it's just the dog catcher on the ballot. We need to be sure that at the local municipality, county level, state level, as well as the federal level, that we have a say in who the people are who handle local issues, pass local ordinances, investigate local crimes, handle all sorts of elements of the justice system. We have to be sure that we're engaged in making those choices.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. It's Moving Mountain Mondays. We are in the Faith Not to Fall with Reverend Teresa Terry Hoard Owens, General Minister and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in both the United States and Canada. When we come forward, a couple more questions of Reverend Terry Hoard Owens, and of course, her word of hope. More on KBLA Talk 1580 in just a moment.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Just in case you missed our Procrastination Crenshaw Town Hall.
My name is Bronwyn, and I've been in this neighborhood for 65 years.
All righty.
I was raised here, right on Crenshaw Boulevard. Ancestry, legacy, everything. No parking. In regards to our elderly, in regards to trying to get from one end to the other, 48th and 50th Street is a dead zone. You got to get off the bus and you got to make your way down in the middle of the block. I'm right across the street. I understand one of the things. I am happy to see you guys. I've been in too many meetings where you weren't there. I understand those who own the buildings and your properties. I understand those who rent from you. Here it is. Why can't we invest in each other?
Making sure they follow through. We're KBLA Talk 1580.
You know that Big Bargain detergent jug is 80% water, right? It doesn't clean as well.
80% water? I thought I was getting a better deal because it's so big.
If you want a better clean, Tide Pods are only 12% water. The rest is pure concentrated cleaning ingredients.
Oh, let me make an announcement.
Attention shoppers, if you want a real deal, try Tide Pods.
Stop paying for watered-down detergents. Pay for clean. If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Pods. Water content based on the leading bargain liquid detergent.
Back to school starts now. Get long-lasting battery life on the Dell XPS laptop powered by Series 3 Intel Core so you can work from anywhere. Now starting at $699 with exclusive student pricing starting at $599. Complete your setup with savings on select monitors and must-have electronics and accessories. Limited time deals and free shipping on PCs and more await you at Dell.com/deals. That's Dell.com/deals.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is connecting you with services and solutions. Domestic violence and family violence is when someone in an intimate or family relationship tries to gain or maintain power and control over another through a wide range of abusive behaviors. Every single act may amount to abuse. Abuse can take on various forms: psychological and emotional, physical and economic, and sexual abuse. The Genesee Center Incorporated is a nationally recognized nonprofit domestic violence prevention and intervention organization, housing women and children from 30 days up to 2 years through emergency and transitional shelters. The Genesee Center also provides support services like mental health counseling, life skills classes, computer training, job referrals, after-school programs for children, field trips, tutoring, and comprehensive direct legal services. If you need help or you'd like to donate or volunteer, call the Genesee Hotline, 1-800-479-7328. That's 1-800-479-7328, or visit genesee.org. Everyone has the right to be safe. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
The Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. 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 King Volley drops the beat.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on the Faith Not to Fall. It's Moving Mountain Mondays with Reverend Teresa Terry Hord Owens. She is the General Minister and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. Madam President, welcome forward to the show.
Thank you so much. It's always good to chat with you.
Madam President, we began our show in the first hour talking about W.E.B. Du Bois's double consciousness, both Negro and America. Two strivings, two different yearnings, but he fuses them, if you will, in a synthesis, Negro and American. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about the Negro being not completely African or American, that too often in our community, we choose one side or the other. We all in on the black question. Or, which we're seeing from increasingly MAGA Republicans, they all in on the American question to the exclusion of the black. And Dr. King argues that there is a hybrid, that there is a synthesis in our accountability, in a real sense, an obligation to both. And of course, in 1988, my father met with 75 organizations in the city of Chicago, where they decided to change the vernacular to African American. Of course, Dad added cultural identity. Irish Americans have Ireland. Italian Americans have Italy. British Americans have Great Britain. But the Negro just comes from the void, black. We don't have nothing we from. Seeking a more cultural recognition. Madam President, this is a rhetorical question, of course. Who are we?
I think we have the right to define. I think it's the Kujichagulia principle of Kwanzaa that says the right to self-determination, the right to name ourselves, the right to define ourselves. And I'm engaged in a lot of conversations with people across the African diaspora through the World Council of Churches, people from the continent, people from the Caribbean. And I'm glad that in that community, all of us refer to ourselves as Africans and people and Africans in diaspora, so that there's some common understanding that we're all from the same place. But it is a unique set of identities in the United States of America, because the very things that most Americans have always been able to claim have not been available to us. And yet no group of people has put more stock in the Declaration of Independence and in the rights given in the Constitution. No one has had more faith and demonstrated and fought harder to make that promise more of a reality. It's sort of like Black folks, they use the Bible against us, right? And yet we have become the greatest interpreters of that sacred text. The ones who believed in Jesus more, the ones who believed in this idea of equality and love and community more than anybody else. But it's really a difficult thing. I know Canadians who are of African descent who will remind me they are not African American, they're African Canadian. There are people who live in the United States who are from the Caribbean who do not want that term African American. They see themselves as Jamaican. And I try to remind people we were all picked up from the same continent, and we were dropped off by different boats on different bodies of land and subject to the same experience of chattel slavery. So it's a really complicated question. I reserve the right for us to define who we are and to name who we are. And being an American is an important part of that. If we give up this notion that we are American, those of us who are American citizens, whether it be from naturalization or because we were born here, we're giving up part of who we actually are. White immigrants are able to patch together this really complex set of identities, and we should be allowed the same thing. I remember my son, maybe fourth grade, had that project, tell us where your ancestors are from. And I had a long conversation with the teacher to explain to her the difficulty. We didn't have Ancestry DNA or 23andMe then. I had no idea of where my African heritage was. And with only 2 Black kids in the class and a white teacher, spent a lot of time with her trying to explain the difficulty of my son being able to participate in this exercise. And we finally settled on a project that allowed him to talk about the roots of the community that I'm from in Indiana, which does take us back sort of pre-antebellum. But it's when we start defining what American is, that's what Christian nationalism is all about, right? You can only be a certain kind of American if you're a certain kind of Christian, and if you look a certain way, and if you're from certain, you're not from certain S-hole countries, as Trump likes to say. We've got too many people trying to define what that means and not living into any of what the history that you've studied and written so well about tells us about what being American actually is.
I've been struggling a lot with this, especially from a faith perspective, because I wrote an article for myself recently called "The Book That We Love Was Written in a Cell." And that's true from Genesis, the story of Joseph, all the way to John the Revelator on an island called Patmos. And maybe because we wrap Joseph up in a coat of many colors and tell that story, that we forget about the hole that he was in.
Right.
Or maybe because we have visions of the future, maybe even prophetic visions ourselves, we don't realize that John the Revelator is in prison. And then we go right down from Genesis to Revelation, and we hear the stories, including but not limited to the indictment, the conspirators who were not allowed to testify because they denied even knowing him, to the betrayal and the cooperation with the government of Judas Iscariot, to the death penalty of Jesus of Nazareth. The perspective of the incarcerated are part of this process. And maybe, just maybe, the person who is sitting in the back of our churches, for whom the book was written in a cell, that they should be brought to the front of the church and sit in the front pew, because their amen is different
Their
than
amen is
everyone who hasn't been through something.
Yeah.
Madam President, about 2 minutes of our final word of hope, and whatever your thoughts are sufficient for.
Sure. To your point, I was in Cane Ridge, Kentucky, the site of the big 1801 revival that ultimately led to the movement that we now call the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, and pointed out the reality of what would have been present, both enslaved and free Black persons, all of whom were sitting in the balcony, clapping hands, shouting, rolling on the floor, being slain in the spirit. And my point to them is history. What does Malcolm Gladwell say? History without context is mythology. And so the history even that my church feeds itself forgets the reality that there are still people, this idea of the Great Awakening revivals as being this bizarre kind of thing. There are people for whom that is a real part of their culture. But because the frame that we use on it is so Eurocentric, we deny the reality of what God has created. And if we deny that reality, we can't really follow God and follow Jesus as was intended. So as a Christian minister, truth-telling, Walter Brueggemann said, is the emancipatory vocation of the church. So I'm all about truth-telling in any environment where I can speak to that truth. And America has to return to truth-telling.
Madam President, I don't know anyone who tells it better. So grateful for your participation. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. We've been in the Faith Not the Fall with Reverend Terry Hort Owens. Madam President, we appreciate your contribution every week.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing you next week. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.